All right, I'm Ed Cruz. Welcome to the last lesson. This is episode 11. Episode 11. All right, episode 11, and why the punch plays such a significant role and tool in the first form. Okay, and we'll look at only one aspect of that. How about if we look at only one aspect of that? When we think of the punch, then let's do a little bit of a review. Right, we think of basically the usage and functions of what the arm is actually doing in its entirety. You have the shoulder, you have the elbow, you have the wrist, and you have the index and thumb, all having a function within when you do the punch. So when we do the punch, forming two sides, or basically, I'm doing only one side right now, but you see me shooting out the punch. You have shoulder, elbow, wrist, index, and thumb. So let's take an aspect of the first form, and how the better we know the punch, the more perfection we put into the punch, the ability to understand each joint and function within the arm of the punch, the better your first form will look. And maybe I'll do one or two examples within the first form to show why that plays such a greater role in it. So for example, let's look at jet saw, right? We have the jet saw motion, okay? So the jet saw motion it seems like a simple motion, but a lot of mistakes are done in jet saw motion. You see a lot of people jet too far back, people jet down, people are too tight on the wrist, and so forth. So let's break down that motion to understand exactly what we're doing. So looking at the shoulder itself, right? When we do the motions of the punch, you never see the shoulder rise, right? You never see the shoulder rise, because if the shoulder rises, then you have the disconnect from the body, and the arm is basically left on its own. Okay, so even if you have the best stance ever, the arm is solo. Hitoride in Japanese is to be solo, or dokushin desu is single, right? So anyway, with that being said, when we do where we latsa and then jet, this is jet saw motion. Notice my shoulder the entire time doesn't have a rise to it. Sometimes people rise it, and for whatever reason they can't control it, but it has to stay sunk the entire time, right? You're basically actually, let me rephrase that again. If you see the shoulder, let's say two things. If the shoulder doesn't rise, that's good. If the shoulder is just in place, that's okay. But if the shoulder, see how my shoulder stretches on the way down, that's even better. Where do you get the stretch? Notice when I do the punch, right? This is punch, stretch. See the difference? Punch, stretch. You need the stretch. It's part of the formula. It's part of the ingredient. When you do the punch, you need it also in the form. So one, if you don't rise it, that's pretty good. Two, what did I say? If you don't rise it, that's pretty good. Two, if it's just in this motion, right, without the stretch, that's okay. But if you can stretch, see this is here, stretch. That's even better. That's what you're looking for. Now you're like, oh, wait a second. There's the stretch that's in the punch. Now there's the stretch within the jet. I was just doing this. See how this looks pretty good? But that looks even better. Okay, now you're like, oh, punch, stretch, shoulder, stretch, that part of the form, good. Now we look at this part here, the elbow controls the motion, right, when you do the punch, right? But at the same time, the elbow stabilizes, and at the last, and you could say sinks, right? The elbows, see how the sinking concept people misinterpret is like me going down. When I shoot out my punch, right, look how my arm is going this way. See, people think, oh, my arm's going here and I'm pushing up. But in actuality, the sink motion is what? I have the stretch here, and then notice my elbow is going like this, but look at the sink motion. See how that's sinking? This may be stretching, but the elbow isn't sinking. But this, see how my elbow is sinking down to do that. So if I sink to do the punch, right, stretch and sink, elbow sinks to shoot out the punch, then same thing here. Stretch, sink. See, this one bringing back only. See how my arm just brings back? But this rotation motion, right? Stretch and sink. Sink motion is two different things, right? You have to stretch to sink the elbow. Otherwise, so hopefully you can see the difference in that. This is elbow push, right? This is elbow push, but this is elbow sink to push. That's what you want, okay? So stretch the shoulder, stretch, right? And then let me, so when I do this, I stretch, and then this is just bring back, sink motion with that. So hopefully that makes sense. And then with that, the wrist, right? When you punch, the wrist doesn't just stay like this. The wrist naturally has an alignment to it. Right? So notice with the right tension, if I force the wrist down, you'll feel the force going down like this. But if the wrist has the right tension, see how my wrist automatically snaps when my elbow sinks, right? I don't have to force my wrist and put any effort or muscle or tension to create that snap. So you just play around with this where you're just like, oh, okay, wow. As my elbow sinks, my wrist snaps automatically, right? See that? So just like this, okay. Oh, nothing there. What's the function of the wrist? See how the wrist aligns it and make sure it's straight. Here, same thing, aligns it, right? This has to align it to create that snap, and the wrist has to have that right amount of tension. Otherwise, it's too limp to do the jet, or it's too tight and you feel the pressure going down. Just the right amount should lead you to flow to the index and thumb. So the index and thumb functions, right, as a pointer to the target. Without this index and thumb, you won't be able to support the hand, right, to do the punch. So when you look at the motion of the jet, when I do the jet, see how I have the natural snap? So you have like a ball shaped here, right? Ball shaped here. Stretch the shoulder, sink the elbow, wrist automatically snaps because of it. And then at the very end, this index and thumb, watch how I do it. If you just go like this, see how the ball is like grabbed here like this? Looks okay. But the index and thumb, watch. Here is okay, here is better. You're hooking with this part, right? This part, the thumb part side, when you do the jet saw. So when you do that, right, stretch, sink, wrist, index thumb, pointing. And then you have the completion of the jet saw motion, right? Snap, right? This way, it's like you're holding it this way, you're missing this part. That little rotation, index and thumb, and then your jet saw will look a lot better. So look at that, how we took one aspect in understanding the concept of the elbow, the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and the index and thumb of the punch, and then we looked at that and related it to one singular motion in Sil Tao with the jet saw motion. Okay? So what does that tell you? How important it is to understand and do the punch correctly. And if you really know the punch, you understand the punch, and you understand the concept behind the punch, then each and every single move that you have within Silam Tao, or what say you can fix, you can repair, you can work on and improve and get better. All right? Practice or not. Later.